it sort of felt like it was the dawn of something new. It just felt like that. Now, whether it felt like that because I was sort of, involved in it, I don't know. But that's really what it felt like. And my view is that subsequently that's proved to be the case. It is important, really. It has been important to me. I suppose the main thing, really, is that it is now the most important rock festival in the world.
In 1989, people were incredibly enthusiastic and audiences were quite special. I mean, a lot of people don't talk about that time as far as being sort of quite influential as far as music was going, but there were a lot of great bands around.
I remember that we were disappointed in the press because I think they were interested in a few other bands and they weren't, and we thought, well, they're bound to notice how well we went, how well, what a great reception we got from the crowd, but they didn't. So we got a few bylines in the NME, as I remember. We were a bit disappointed in that. So it was important from that point of view, but it didn't do what I thought we were hoping it would do. I think we just released the album. We wanted to, obviously, to push the album a bit. And it did. We sold more albums, but I think it was more from the actual crowd rather than the publicity that it generated. But actually having the experience to play Reading, of course, is fabulous. You've got, God knows, over 1,000 people there. And they're enjoying it. Many of them would never have seen us before.
You do appreciate that, or you begin to appreciate that it's not your audience, it's 95% of people don't know, probably don't know who you are. So you do cater the set to a certain extent for that, really.
The second time we played Reading, we had management record companies screaming at us because we were going to play a lot of new numbers that nobody had ever heard before. In our Reading set, and because I was just like, well, we basically did a greatest hit sets last year, why the hell would I want to do that again? That didn't help my reputation for being difficult, but so be it. I mean, it's just, I don't see the point in just being some sort of performing seal. It just sits there and balances balls and claps quite happily that everybody loves them.
Oh, it was a great thing because we didn't even want to get off the stage. And the time as well, when you're playing festivals, it's just like 30 to 45 minutes and we haven't really played our best numbers yet and we think we're going to go on. And especially when they ask for more, you just think we're going to come back and do another set. But then time, because it's a lot of musicians coming on after you and all that.
Our job was there to be some warm-up for things that were happening later on, and we were well aware of that.
I think initially that at that time we were sort of just on the way up, and we were probably doing our first festivals ever, and just the sheer sort of excitement, the volume of it all, and there's something totally different to playing a festival than there is in the sort of little clubs that we were gradually building up from.
It's nothing like it. I've done festivals in America and England, all over Europe. We're about to do the Fuji Fest, and the excitement level is off the hook. It really is. It's like excitement overload. It's like a kid going to the amusement park for a musician.
I think one of the things as well, wasn't it? You'd be the first band ever from Zimbabwe. Okay, there was the WOMAD Festival, it's primarily for music from whatever, but the first African band, certainly from Zimbabwe, African band ever to play anything like Reading or any of these festivals. It was a big first.
That was the first really big gig for us, and we were quite concerned when it started to rain. And we thought everyone would clear off, and the fact that everyone stayed, and it was a big thing. Yeah, it was a fantastic day.
I mean, as years have gone on, I mean, we've gone further and further down the bill, which means there's less and less pressure, so they become more and more enjoyable. I mean, the big ones are great, if you're headlining and everything's going well, it's a great experience, walking out in front of 30,000 people, however many people.
For working class British people, like somebody like Oasis, I think they can see these festivals as being some kind of pinnacle. I think for us it was, bit of a laugh, really.
Honestly,
honestly, if I was 17, 18, looking at, is this the life I pursue? No, I wouldn't do it. Not from what I've learned of what's happened. I'm just not fucking interested.
I think if
you love music,
if
you
you're
would.
driven to do music,
Driven, yeah.
if you're driven to do music, then I think just will happen whatever way. I mean, you could differ. I mean, I think there's some things are great there. You can have your own little recording studio. You can, years ago, whenever you went in the studio, you're at the mercy of people, whoever's doing the desk.
You don't need a studio. You don't even need a record company anymore, which is great. You don't need an A&R man to look at you and some wanker say, "Oh, I don't like it. Change your clothes or change your songs." You don't need that. That's brilliant. So a lot more opportunity, I think, for kids these days.
What bands are always looking for is some kind of edge, some kind of way of getting people to notice them. And there've always been various ways, little tricks of the trade that you can use to do that. And I think you bloody have to. There's no point going to your local pub and thinking one day somebody's going to discover me. It took me years, and I still see people today at my age who still think that's what's going to happen. And it isn't. You've got to create a splash out there for yourself.
When I was a kid, I think being in a band was something that was unusual. And, if you were at school and you said you were in a band, everyone went, wow. And I can't do that. How does he do that? Or, now, he's in a band. Everyone's in a band. Get a keyboard, deep, 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 deep. I'm in a band.
Et for young musicians now to go for it là, c'est a nightmare. Comment tu fais? How you make your money, how you can live? C'est terrible.
There's too many bands, and too many bands that see it as a career, that are very business. Maybe you have to be more business orientated from the very beginning now. The old model of record companies and promotion, all that stuff, that's dead. Everybody knows it's dead. No one kind of knows what's going to replace it quite yet. So it's easier having 27 year history behind you than starting now.
Where do you want to be starting out now?
I'd rather have been starting out then than now. Because there was something going on then and we were part of something. It's harder now, I think. It's more competitive, it's more driven by money and promotion and marketing, and I think it is harder now. I think it's a harder world.
It's just white noise. How do you cut through? I would hate to be trying to make it today. It would just be awful.
But I mean, if you're going into it as a career prospect, well, that's something different, and that's something you've really got to work at. And Crazy, we're very lucky. We just went off like a rocket, and it does happen. But most people don't. They work at it for years, and you do it because you love it. But I wouldn't recommend getting a mortgage on it.
There's still no shortage of talent, but the traditional routes have changed at a recognition. I think it's more against talent than for it at the moment.
And it must be difficult for new bands now, because you don't make money off records, really, do they? So all they do is traditionally we survive making money off T-shirt sales and the live gig money. But now the record companies are offering deals, like a 360 deal, how it's called, where they take your live money and they take your merchandise money. So what's the point? It's like, if they're going to do that, why don't you just make your own merchandise and do your own gigs and promote yourself? Why do you need a record label to do that?
It's kind of very strange. It's like no one expected Jimi Hendrix to be any good with money. It's like, it wasn't about that. But nowadays, people respect bands that, blah, 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 made millions and invested it in property in New York. What a clever guy. You think, oh, fuck that. It's very interesting, that changeover. We've always been hopeless with money, and we've made lots, but we haven't got any.
Yeah,
like all musicians should be, really.
And from listening to what's coming into the show now, I find people if they're reading books on business, they're going in saying we need to have the right manager and we need to have the right business model for doing this, and we can get a certain fan base on MySpace, and then we can build a live following, and then maybe we can license the album to America. But they're all talking about the business side.
You know, I was one of 2 people that I knew in the whole of Hull that went to a festival when I was growing up. I didn't know anybody that was actually in a band. I didn't know anybody that even owned a guitar. You know, at that time. Now, it's impossible not to know people that go to festivals, and it's equally not impossible not to know people that have got a guitar or a drum kit and want to be in a band. Everybody wants to be in a band now, and that's why it's harder for bands, I think, because actually the competition among their peers is so much greater.
It's because you very much had heroes that you don't quite get nowadays. You know, you had people like Bowie, Bolan, and they were almost untouchable. You know, you didn't have the sort of media coverage you got. So your ambition was to become this huge, great, high, big star. You know, as time went on, you didn't mind it. You settled for a little bit less, providing that you were getting all the experience that these guys had.
I don't have the desires that I used to have. I still have ambitions. I don't think it's such a need for me. It's what I do, you know, and I do enjoy it. There are times when it's still, you know, you get the tingles in your spine, you know, you get goosebumps. There are times it still happens. But there are certainly writing songs and going into my studio. I mean, because you know, I work there on my own. You still need to motivate yourself, and sometimes that's a little harder than maybe it used to be.
I suppose it's more of a therapy thing nowadays. It's like I do it to like keep myself sane. It's like I always keep my hand in playing the guitars and writing bits and pieces, and like playing DJing and stuff. DJ a lot of home parties I do. I just do it like, you know, it's a hobby.
But it's automatic for you that this music will be a part of your life.
It always, when I say it's a curse, isn't it? It's like it's a blessing and a curse at the same time. It's like, if there's anything I'm really, really good at is being a musician. Everything else is like I just don't kind of like cut it with.
I just get a real, you know, a real buzz from doing it, because when it works, it's magic, you know. I mean, I still say the Pogues are the best band in the world on their day, probably. There's some contenders.
I really think the gift is that if you can wake up in the morning and be interested in what you're doing. I mean, a lot of people from 20 years ago, they might have had a greatest hits, and they can go around the globe and parade their greatest hits out for people every summer, and use their fans like some kind of cash machine, you know, to just reach in and grab some money to get through the year. I don't really know how that works, because I don't really feel like I've ever been attached. I don't really feel like I've ever been a part of the pop machine. I mean, it may have been nice, but I just don't have that kind of connection to, you know, success.
You know what? That's the intro, but I liked it so much, we gotta do it again. Yeah. Right now? All right, right now? Right now. Right now.
Drive comes from the love of what I do, and hopefully being able to do it as good as possible for as long as possible. I enjoy what I'm doing. It's not like a job. It's not like, you know, a plumber or a government worker or somebody that works 8 hours and then goes home and turns on the telly. What I do is kind of a thing where if I wake up and I feel good, I'm going to work as long as possible until I don't feel good, and then rest and wake up the next day and do the same thing all over again because I enjoy doing it.
Because just like when I was 6, the only thing that makes sense when the rest of the world, when the world of people and humans and civilization doesn't make any sense, which is a lot of the time, the thing that makes sense to me is music. It's an abstract. So the musical side of things, which is an abstract, is kind of, you hear something and you go, and your whole soul just goes, yes, that's what I feel like, you know? And I still hear records by other people, and sometimes I don't hear records by other people, so I have to make them myself.
As a musician, I'm a person who wants to unite people, because when you are like on a dancing floor, all your brains are there for excitement. You are happy and dancing. You don't think of, let me bash this bastard or let me kill so and so. You have no brains of like that. All you want is excitement, enjoy, all that kind of things. And I wish the world was like that. That's what makes me keep on writing music to a certain point where I think maybe our children will understand what we are saying.
I think it's because it's what I do. Sometimes I think it's a curse as a musician. It's like when you're really good at being a musician and you're not really good at anything else, you're kind of like either going to be really rich or really poor. So I've got the curse of being like a musician where you're really good at making music, but you don't really earn lots of money out of it a lot of the time.
I don't know if it's a real need. It's just what I do. It's what I've done all my adult life, you know. So I mean, it's not even something I question really. It's just something I do. You know, I know a lot of people that don't make music find it amazing that someone can actually write a song. But you know, when you're a musician, you write songs. That's what you do.
It's all I know, really. I mean, it's all I know. I mean, it worries me a lot sometimes, because I think to myself, what the bloody hell am I going to do if I can't do this, you know?
And I've had to kind of just knuckle down and get like a day job as well. I find that quite difficult to find something that I actually quite like. You know, I just kind of fell into doing a particular kind of work, and it's never fulfilling. It's never fulfilling on any kind of level. It just all it does is bring some money in, because I've got a family to look after. So I mean, for me, the music is just there to keep me sane. You know, whether I make any money out of it anymore is a moot point, really.
It is a bit of an obsession. I think it would be probably a good thing to do something else for a year and maybe leave it alone, you know, for a while, just to kind of experience that, you know. As yet, you know, I haven't had a sort of hiatus from being in a band probably for more than 6 months since I was, or maybe even less than that, since I was, you know, 13. So it's very much a kind of obsessive kind of thing, you know.
Also, speaking for Steve Mac, Steve's in America now. He's quite successful, does web design and stuff for music. But he would drop it all tomorrow just to be in a band again, not even earning money. I think he would be in a job in musician, being a singer. He definitely would do it.
For me, whenever I was in the Petros, I just thought I was going to be, a musician for the rest of my life. But, earning some money, I didn't realise I was going to have to be a pauper again, so...
Yeah, this band's been going since 1985, really. Well, before, if you consider that, I've always spinning groups and always been doing it, and that time has just flown past, you know. And I do think, people say when you're going to stop, and I suppose I'll stop when I lose that kind of drive to continue, really. I've never felt that, really.
People look at me and think, okay, he's nearing 50 and he's behaving like that. What's wrong with him? So I'm thinking, am I too old to be doing what I'm doing? And then I do another gig and I find, no, I'm fine. And so I get all the young guys in Iceland sometimes. They come to look at me and they say, yeah, you can teach us a couple of things more. So that's fine.
I just play music for a living, and to make and to express whatever I'm expressing, whether you like it or not, it's up to you, but this is me. That's what I do.
I mean, it is a scary thing. I'm amazed that I've got away with it for 30 years, to be honest.
Like I was saying before, I feel like the music's in my bones, and it's like the boogie's in him, and it's got to come out.
When the Negresses were over, I asked myself, what I'm going to do now? I'm 42. I don't have a lot of things except music. I cannot. I can do a wall. I can't build a wall. I know to do fishing nets. Voilà. So I know to do fishing nets. But I prefer singing at the moment before doing fishing nets.
I don't get paid a lot of money, but I think I'm much better. But that's the way it is. I still have a career, and I can work 100 nights a year, and not every year though.
There was times, I think probably for about 6 to 8 months in the mid-90s, where I wanted to stop being in a band and I wanted to try and do something else.
That's professionally bad-tempered, Such a Surge, and a track called I'm Real, and so am I. You find us happily ensconced in Berlin. We're catching up with The Lightning Seeds and Dodgy on tour, but next a band that have been compared to Jefferson Airplane and Jane's Addiction. Well, that's a pretty tall...
And that wasn't that I fell out of love with music or anything. That was because I didn't like the people that in the world, living in London, the world of music in that area, and it was just some bad friend choices on my part, looking back at it now. But I remember then thinking, man, this is like an illness that I can't shake it off, and I'm not going to touch the guitar, I'm not going to write a song, I'm not going to picture myself standing at a microphone ever again. And then, I'll be walking back from the pub drunk, having a fantasy about doing a gig somewhere, and, or then going to a gig, and I'm only going for a purely entertainment reason, and I'm standing there thinking, I wouldn't have done it like that, or right, that was brilliant, I'm going to nick that, and, those type of thoughts. So I wouldn't know how to answer what it is, other than sometimes it's felt like an illness, but most of the time it's been the gift that I've got that allows me not to have to go and do a job I don't want to do.
Oh, I definitely got burned out for a while. It's a really demanding business, and after a while, when you're killing yourself on the road and making records that people don't like, and people are telling you what to do, it did stop becoming fun. So we just stopped doing it for 7 years, and then it, without any albatrosses around our neck anymore, it became fun again. So here we are. And 50 years old, that's beyond being too old to do this. It's now so old that it's kind of halfway funny and cool. And I think it's funny to see all us old timers still, well, not all of us, a lot of us didn't make it, but the ones that made it, it's fun to see them kicking around and people still showing some kind of interest.
If it wasn't more than just, made my life better, it made my life even be sort of thing, I can't really imagine how I would have got through without some of it. So to know that some of the stuff I do fulfills a similar role for other people is in itself a kind of self-perpetuating thing. I can't imagine
a day when I wouldn't want to be doing music, because it's the only thing that I've ever really been able to do successfully and enjoy.
I think when you're younger, you got more energy and you can try more things. When you get older, you get a bit more stern in your approach, and you don't want to go off on an adventure just to see how it's going to end up, because you've been on those journeys and you already know how it ends up, if you know what I mean. Sometimes the young person would say that's a very stubborn old person, but they're stubborn because they've been young and they've already been through it, and they don't want to be young twice.
Another thing I was thinking when you're talking about musicians and so on is that now we're both fathers, so we've got children. We didn't come from musical families, so I never saw a guitar until I got my first one. But now my children see me playing and they see instruments. Sometimes I think the children of musicians are kind of precocious or whatever, but that sort of adds a new spark to it as well,
Generational thing. Yeah, I think I take that, and also because we were young men when we began our band, in our early 20s. Now we're in our mid 40s,
No, we're not.
But the thing is that the stories about the people of those songs initially, our audience has grown up the same age as us, so we're taking people through through our into our middle age now, and I think there's something absolutely fantastic about that. I love that part of it.
I don't think until now that I was ever I never actually embraced the whole, the fucking rock or music or pop or jazz or whatever it was into, or I didn't really want to be successful. Dennis Desmond used to say to me, "Your problem is, Mary, you don't want it badly enough, Right now, I'd love to have a little bit more, because I have worked my ass off.
But yeah, we've managed to survive. I mean, I did take 3 years off from 96 to 99 and lived in California. What happened was The Cure came through town in LA, and I got up and played with them, and it was great, being on stage and being in a band and sitting backstage with them afterwards, drinking beer. And then they got on their tour bus to go on to the next gig, and I had to get in my car and drive home, and it was like, I kind of miss this.
Hear the wind blowing. I can hear the wind blowing. I like the way we did this last night. Long down to Saturday, long down far the other way. We hope that you enjoy your stay in the age of miracles. There's plenty of work for everyone. With 2 and 2 add up to 1. Let's sing this song in unison in the age of miracles. Alright.
Oh, I mean, I should accept the fact that, it's possible that people will stop coming to the shows and I'll have to do something else, but, I don't really want to think about that. For selfish reasons, I'm having too much fun.
It gets ingrained in you, and it's quite hard to go and watch another band if you feel like you should be on stage and so I can't see that we'd ever not play.
No,
not and there's something. It just it's like
we're in for life, aren't we now?
Yeah.
In a way, music brought me everything that was good in my life. Brought me my wife Stephanie and all the people so many people that I'm close to and I care about, and it gave me a place to put all my manic energy. Otherwise, God knows what I would be doing, stealing car stereos or whatever. Who knows?
I don't see myself as as if I've changed. I'm still the same Rise, and I'm still writing the songs, and I'm still wanting to perform in these festivals, and I still want to meet people or other musicians to work with, and go along with music. This is my life, and I want to still want to keep on.
I totally understand what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and I know that when I feel that that I don't have it, I'll stop. But at the moment, nobody. I'm not arrogant, but I just know that nobody sings better than I do.
there's nobody else who is as good as doing what I do as I am. So as long as that's true, I'll be at it.
There's a few of you, isn't there? Well done, great day, a great day.
Dear, I don't know really. That's a weird one. I mean, surviving, feeding the kids, getting the kids through school. I just, I mean, it's been that's a bit facetious. I mean, I've had some fantastic moments. Playing Glastonbury last time was unbelievable as a musician. You know, to the fact that people like what you do is amazing. I mean, I always find it very humbling and quite embarrassing, really, that, you know, it freaks people out because you stand up on stage and play a bit of music. I feel like I count myself as very lucky, to be honest.
Well, I'm just generally proud of the body of work, really, and I think there's no single, one thing that I can. I mean, it's been nice that we've travelled, obviously, and it's been brilliant to play concerts in everywhere, really. But there's not kind of any one achievement that I'm particularly proud of. As I say, initially it was as being featured on the John Peel programme, but then you have to be cross that hurdle, and that still is really probably one of the most important ones. But then it widens out, and you're on Top of the Pops, and you go to Japan and all this kind of thing, and you kind of perception of what you're doing changes. But ultimately, it's just I'm proud of the songs I've written, really.
I look back on some of the things that we did in relation to making it big in the States, and I'm really proud of that, because there aren't many people that do that. And in a certain sense, other people's failure to do that makes me more proud of what we did. We sold like maybe in total 2 million albums in the States, and if you compare that to like the Eagles or whatever, well, maybe it was like 1 million, whatever. But when you compare it to the Eagles or AC/DC, it's small beer. But then you look at people that are so desperate for success, as that just to whoring themselves out to succeed, and they plainly don't. And that makes me look back at what we did and think, you know what, we really did good.
I met Eric Clapton. We recorded in I think it was the Townhouse with him, and sat there watching the cricket with him, and he fell asleep. There's a picture actually going around somewhere of Kev Reverb's Never... Let me say that again. Of Kev Reverb... Let me say that again. Of Kev Reverb's Nether Member being waved about a sleeping Eric Clapton somewhere, floating about. They moved us out after that. I think word got back.
Well, the Beatles were on Capitol Records, and so was Dean Martin and Grand Funk Railroad, and just to be on Capitol Records was way more than a dream come true, and we just had to do it. We had to do that. We weren't really cut out for that kind of business, but it was just too funny to be on Capitol and to walk through the hallways and see pictures of Frank Sinatra and all that stuff.
I'm quite proud that we sort of accidentally, or just by following our true sort of intuition, we came across an ancient sort of musical, or even deeper than that, form almost completely by accident, and to discover this ancient shamanic way of doing music. That was I feel quite proud about that. You know, I feel, proud's the right word, but I feel happy that even though I didn't know where the fuck I was going with it at the time, I got somewhere which was real, and I got it because I just followed my heart.
I think one of the most amazing things for me was playing the Fillmore West in San Francisco, you know, and walking in there, and they had this amazing restaurant in the front with all the posters from all the bands that have played there, and you're looking at Hendrix and you're looking at The Doors and Janis Joplin and then you go out and play that show that night on that same stage. Sounds crazy, but actually it's quite good feeling.
In our punk days, we were invited onto the Clash's 16-ton tour, just as a little, 17-year-old punk band, and they came to Portsmouth and Bournemouth, and they invited us on the bill. And you have to understand that we looked upon the Clash as otherworldly, just figures way above us, you know. And to go onto the tour, it was terrifying, but I still think of it as one of my greatest memories of all time, you know, and they were great.
It was just a real buzz having Joe Strummer on stage with us. You know, there's one gig I remember doing in I think it was Paris, and Joe was playing guitar, and I just looked round. We were doing London Calling or something, and there's Joe, and he's wearing this fucking t-shirt with my face on it. I just thought, how cool is that?
And then one day we got to give a trophy to a winning dog at Wembley for a greyhound race. That was pretty cool.
I guess just the fact that people still give a shit after 25 years now. 83 the band was started, Spaceman 3, so I guess, yeah, just that. Anyone will still give a shit.
Number one in Iceland, that was a big moment.
Number one in Iceland was, yeah.
Number one in Iceland for, I don't know, half a week.
Yeah.
I think we had 2 number 1 albums, and I think to have done that was amazing, you know. Any one song would have been great, but I think to have managed to do it over 2 albums and get 2 albums to number 1 in Ireland, it's a real body of work, you know, and proud of that. I'm proud of what it did for us as well, in a lot of ways. It got us we were all just, you know, it's just a Drimna boy, and Ray was just a Tala boy, and it got us out of there, and it got us, you know, into a whole different world where people didn't know where Drimna or Tala were. And now you weren't. Now you were the guitar player and the singer, and it was just it helped you to perceive yourself differently and more positively. I think that was a great thing. It was a very empowering experience, and it hasn't gone away. You know, I still feel a huge positive approach to what I do in life. I love doing the show, and I do things now that I couldn't have conceived of doing before I was in the band. Like, I can present shows here that might be a top 10 radio show to like a 250,000 listeners, and you think, if you'd said that to me before I was in the band, I wouldn't need to go to hospital. You know, I would have been on pills for nerves. It's just all those experiences have just made me think, you can do more than you think you can do.
Everybody that, you know, any kid who starts a band, and the first thing they really want to do is, it's more than anything, it was to make a record, and I guess to make a 12-inch single or something or other pretty much sealed it for me. And
still being alive, surviving that, surviving being in Gay Bikers and Acid, yeah, that's an achievement. None of us died at 27.
Being here still, you know, I mean, for us a privilege, you know, to be able to do this and to still make a living from it. You know, I'm one of the lucky ones, you know, really. I mean, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of people that played that day, Reading in '89, that, you know, are doing other stuff now.
Whenever the Guildford Four got released from, when they got released from prison, we were invited, you know, as guests. And I mean, I was there. I was kind of invited as a guest that night. And I mean, you know, we had done lots of gigs and we talked about their kind of cause, you know, a lot in interviews or whatever. So to be actually there and see these people, and I actually got friendly with Paul Hill, one of the guys, for a while. You know, he was the kind of friend I'd go out drinking with him for a while, and then he moved to, he married one of the Kennedys' nieces, and he's living on Fifth Avenue. And I remember saying to him, you know,
where's the invite now?
he's I think he's moved back to Ireland, you know. But I mean, I was fascinated with it, and he was like, he was really thankful. He knew, he kind of knew what we had done, you know, and sort of put our ass on the line as well, you know. Because I mean, you know, it never endeared us to anybody doing those things. People were forever telling us, "Shut up," you know. Wait until you've got to a certain level before you do it. You know, wait until you're U2 before you do it. Whatever. But we have, you know, I got that's an achievement as well, you know, to get to meet those people and you know, and for them to say thank you. Do you know what I mean? That's incredible.
I'm just proud to be in two great bands. That's put out a really good body of work.
Still being a musician. When a lot of people have just fallen by the wayside, and you know, kind of, because it takes your heart away sometimes when you're giving all you have to give, and for whatever reason it is, it's not reaching where you want it to reach. And so a lot of times it takes a lot of courage to do it again. It's like being in a fight and losing. You know what I mean? And it kind of takes the taste out of your mouth for that. But if that's what you love doing, if you get knocked down, you got to get up and try it again. If you get knocked down, you got to figure out why you got knocked down, get up and try it again. And I think any career or any endeavor that a person has, if they're going to give up at the first sign of trouble, then you shouldn't be doing it.
If I tell you a small story, which would be, I think, should describe why I don't think of anything being the greatest achievement or anything like that. And this happened back in '92 with the Sugar Cubes, and we're just finishing the U2 tour. We get offered to do Arsenio Hall, and we do Arsenio Hall, and everybody around us says, yes, this is your great crossover potential. You're playing Arsenio Hall, and we do the song, and as we are about to leave, we hear somebody say they're dragging him out of the car, and we pay no attention to it, and somebody says, oh my God, it's gonna go, and we pay no attention to it. Don't know what this is. We are put into our limo, and we're driven to the, I think it's called the Hyatt on Sunset, which is like the rock and roll hotel or whatever. And as we enter the hotel, somebody says in the lobby, take a look over there. And we take a look over there, and there's a smoke. And guess what? It's the start of the LA riots. So, did many people that night watch Arsenio Hall? No. Did they watch the live broadcast of the LA riots on TV? Yes. So, the Sugar Cube's greatest moment didn't happen.
But what I can only say is that we had a great time together when they were here, and I really miss having them today. Otherwise we could be in a different position, or maybe we wouldn't be here. We'll be back home, or maybe we'll be in another country, but doing the same thing. As much as I know, they were all geared to work hard and improve themselves and improve the music. That's what I would really want to say.
I mean, I think we all know what the fantasy of success is, and that's what yellow papers or tabloids or whatever, and this sort of paparazzi world. Some people say that is success. Fair enough. Then you get American singers who say that they are imprisoned by their success. That's not fantasy. That's a grave situation.
When you're an aspiring musician, you can get very focused on, making it as the goal. But when you sort of achieve one of your goals, you sometimes might find that it doesn't have all the answers, and it's not like you aren't suddenly transformed into something you thought you would be.
At the time, I was just so happy to get out of Leicester, see the world, be doing something that was perceived as being worthwhile. And I'd always wanted to be in a band anyway, and had been in bands before Crazy Head, not many, but I had. And to actually be getting paid for it, I mean, somebody who was used to either being on the dole or doing very low-paid jobs, I had no qualifications. That was fantastic.
We have, for us it was makes no sense that we have success. We're playing in the street and everybody, and sometimes suddenly everybody want to be dressed as you. That.
I don't think the idea of commercial success really ever entered our heads. I mean, it was great when we all got to sign off the dole and we did a publishing deal and put ourselves on 50 quid a week or whatever it was, and then if you sold some T-shirts at a gig at Tamworth Rattle, then you could split another, 50 quid between you for that week.
And our third single, I remember we were playing, I think, the Electric Ballroom, supporting somebody like the Shop Assistants or the Lemon Drops. And our manager came just after the sound check, come walking in, going, "Oh, like this," because what he says, the new single's gone at number 5 in the indie charts, which was great for us at the time, because the indie charts were quite a good indication of what was going on. I don't think they even exist anymore, but so that was great. That was probably the moment that we all thought, bloody hell, this is great.
Don't call me, don't call me, don't call me, don't call me.
When you grew up, and I don't know how many millions of people watched Top of the Pops, but it was an event of the family stayed in on a Thursday night to watch it, and you kind of grew up with that. And then the first time we did it, we went along and it was great. And Woody, who's the drummer, who's in Madness, obviously, he made us all feel really stupid because he said, "Well, I've already done this 21 times." And I was like, "Okay, Woody, all right. I'm excited, all right." I mean, being on Top of the Pops, for instance, was at long last my relatives I could justify what I do. To my mum and dad and to my relatives, I mean, up to that point it was like, okay, yeah, he's in a band, but when are you going to get a proper job? It's the Top of the Pops for them. It was like, okay, we know he's doing all right now.
We had pretty modest ambitions, I think, with Green on Red. I think we just thought it was really cool that we could go into the studio and make a record and go out and play some gigs, and I don't think that we ever had that kind of ambition to go much further than that. And it turns out, we got our 15 minutes with time on the clock to spare. We made a lot of records for a lot of different labels, and that was what was important to us, more than just being a pop star. I think it getting signed to a label afforded us a lifestyle, and that's really what was more important to us than anything.
When the band became successful, it never got out of hand because we would play the National Stadium in Dublin to 2,500 people, where it was like being in the Beatles for a bit, and 2 days later you'd be in the empty Justice of York, and that brought you down to earth very, very quickly,
I did always carry that belief, and then when we started becoming successful in being on the radio and Top of the Pops and stuff, that's when the self-doubt started, really. Funnily enough, it's like, am I really worthy of this? I think any creative person really must feel that way. It's sometimes being creative and being successful don't really go necessarily hand in hand.
The exception of very few artists. I think most people that sell like 1 million records and become millionaires out of rock and roll or whatever, they're shit. To my opinion, they're shit. The big bands have always been shit.
We got a new single out, right? This isn't it.
I'll be honest, I think that it's very difficult when you're young and you have the first flush of lots of people telling you you're great, for that not to affect you a bit. And I'm sure it did affect me a bit. I'm sure I got probably a bit big-headed in a kind of bull in a china shop punk kind of way, probably. Probably a bit.
I actually prefer the sort of the notion that you measure success by the longevity of what you've actually achieved artistically, and not only the longevity. Actually, not the longevity. That's not the first thing, but it's what it means to people, and the longevity of it comes into that. How your work sort of resonates with people, and how it's sort of how it's perceived, how people sort of like, how much people like what you do. Really, as simple as that. And how long it can last, if you can, it's great to sort of like, sort of have a one-hit wonder that's kind of like a hit for the summer, and then it kind of disappears, and it's just a sort of memory of that particular time. And that I think is actually a really magical thing to being able to achieve, but also to have done something that can last for years and years. That people can discover sort of years after you've done it and think, oh yeah, this is really, really good.
Well, I've never had, I had that huge success in 87, 88, 89. I went everywhere and I did everything, and I had I used to have a 14-piece crew and band, and 2 backing singers and guitars and horn section, riders and drugs, and fuck me, it nearly killed me, And I did a gig, I just came back from Finland, and if you could compare the two, 10 years later, almost from the first time I ever went there, 20 years from the first time I ever went to Finland, would have been with that huge entourage on a tour bus. And I thought that's what I always wanted to be, on a tour bus, sleeping and eating on a tour bus. It was not all it was cracked up to be. But if you compare that and what I just came back from now, well, this was much, I had great fun, man. We had just a ball, when we were all together, all of us, but this was really successful.
Success is always really measured by, in traditional ways, how many people bought your album, how many people turned up at the gig, how many. It's all about numbers. But after a while, I realised that there's a human element to those numbers. So, 10, 15 years later, you can do a gig where, if you played London 15 years ago and 2,000 or 3,000 people turned up, and you compared that to playing now where maybe 500 or 600 people turn up, then on the face of it that would be, a huge disappointment. But I realised there was a human element to those numbers, and that human element manifests itself in the enthusiasm that people show you when they do turn up and see you. So sometimes it doesn't matter how many people turn up, but if a dozen people turn up and you can tell by looking in their eyes that they still absolutely get it,
that they still absolutely love it, or that it's still a huge part of them, then it's really good. Then it still matters. Then it's still worth doing.
As a band, as a young band as well, it was like another opening for the road for whole Africa, and we were really privileged to have that kind of chance of being this youngest and also having all this response and everything just going very, very well with us.
I think for me, I think if we had had success, I might have been dead about 2 years later. Do you know what I mean? Because I wouldn't have handled that very well. I mean, even getting to number 42 in the charts, I didn't handle that very well. So I mean, can you imagine being like top 10 or whatever? So it depends on the person, I think.
Looking back on it, I think there was a sort of a degree of self-sabotage in the fact that I didn't want to let success happen. You know, I wasn't emotionally equipped enough to handle its success, and there were lots of, there was sort of quite a gulf between my lifestyle at the time, squatting, smoking a lot of dope, that lifestyle, and the lifestyle of somebody who is a successful musician who's starting to appear on the cover of record papers and magazines. There were two very distant, what felt like two very distant extremes. So I had a lot of trouble moving into the new world, if you like.
It's a very big question, isn't it? I mean, you measure success, I would say, by how happy you are, because even though I've done very well financially, quite successful materialistically, it doesn't make you feel any more invulnerable. You still can feel very vulnerable because of the business that you're involved in. So I mean, you have to measure success by how happy you are, really.
I don't think it bothered me and John so much, not the Petrels not having hits or anything, because we had experienced it in the past with the Undertones. At least we had our moment, our 5 minutes of fame. But what has been disappointing since then is the fact that all of us from the Petrels have never really got on to greater things. We should all be earning a living as musicians, basically. And
yeah,
that's what's sad, is that Steve isn't, Raymond isn't, and Kieran isn't. Me and John obviously reformed the Undertones, and so we make a bit of money that way. But we should all have been going on to much bigger things, definitely.
Probably wasn't as much money as my fantasy involved. I figured a radio hit or two and the money would start rolling in, and instead the lawsuits start rolling in. It's awful. It's so much easier before a radio hit than after a radio hit. Nobody cared. Then you have a radio hit and everybody cares in terms of, what they want out of you. Our fan base got pissed off at us for our successful radio songs. And radio doesn't pay much money. And then they blow up a couple of World Trade Center buildings and the music industry drops out and your wife leaves you and you have to sell your art collection.
I've gone out of my way I've never wanted to be very famous, I've had as much fame as I ever wanted or needed, and there's nothing a drop more of it could do for me, or I think there's a certain point. It's nice people coming up to you and saying, I love your music, or you changed my life with your music, or whatever nice things people come up and say. But there's a point where fame just destroys your life, I think. So
we've gone Australia 6 times in Australia, 5 times in America, 3 times in Hong Kong, to name it. But there's nothing really which I'm credited for. I don't know what I'm credited for now. Whether I have to try again, or I'm still trying anyway.
We've done music over the years, and yes, we have like our own little small following, but I think the best is yet to come. I think it's all a learning curve, and we've all graduated, and now the fun starts.
Where you are in the great scheme of
charts or how many record albums you've sold or something. What does it matter? I mean, we're more successful than Joe Blogg's band around the corner. We're less successful than Madonna. We're somewhere in the middle. It's just like in your life, you're going to be rich. You're not going to be the richest man in the world, and you're not going to be the poorest. You're going to be somewhere in the middle. Don't worry about it. The last time I looked at my fridge, there was food there. That's all I worry about.
I guess so, yeah.
Completely not.
Well,
the plan. We're all millionaires.
No.
I've never really had a plan, so.
We never had a plan. I've got no plan whatsoever. I never have had.
No.
I don't know. I don't really know what the plan was, actually. So I'll say yes.
Yeah.
No, but they've got much better. Much better than I ever would have imagined.
We didn't have plan.
Ouais.
That's the problem.
No plan.
We didn't have plan. We tried to do one, but it's difficult to do a plan.
I can't say that I don't wish it had gone through the roof, but who knows where that leads you. Kurt Cobain might lead me to have been him, so that's not quite so good, is it?
Plan. There was never a plan.
If I could have been my wildest fantasy, said that I could be on Capitol Records and work with John Paul Jones and play big festivals and go, to all over the world, that pretty much was more than what I would have thought of.
There was never a plan. So yeah.
In showbiz, they have gone according to the plan, because I would like to say it's a thing which I never thought it would happen to humble people like us coming from Africa.
I had no plan in the first place, so I followed a very rocky path.
No, there was never a plan.
Hell no. And because of that, I'm looking forward.
Did you ever have a plan? Did I ever have one? Not really.
There was no plan. There was no plan, yeah. Perfect answer.
I mean, that to me is an honor. It's a privilege that you're able to do what you feel like ultimately, you were meant to do.
Well, difficult to say. I mean, when I was 14, I had visions of living in a French chateau by this age, But I suppose a chacara in Brazil is kind of okay.
No, I don't think things have gone to plan. Things never go to plan.
Yeah, I think all the things have gone to plan, apart from there was no plan.
Well, I never had a plan. And I never really had a crystal ball, and I don't think that I would have wanted one. I mean, really the beauty of it is to not know where anything's going.
Did I say I had amazing shared experiences with other band members?
You didn't?
No, I didn't. In my experience, everyone in a band, from hindsight, I'd say everyone in a band is having a separate experience that is totally unique only to themselves, and there's a common delusion that you're all sharing it. But when you ask anyone afterwards, the same, 4 people, the same question, they give very different answers.
And if we speak about Reading 89, of course the aspiration to play one of the world's greatest festivals, that's just like, the Americans would say, awesome. And of course it's fantastic to have that in your belt, that you have played Reading Festival. And when you meet people, you can say, oh, I've done that. And now you brought it on. How do I remember it? Like a small safari trip.
Rock and roll is such a paltry ambition, on one hand, and on the other hand, it's also really important. Making records can be you know, fight of good versus evil. Jim Dickinson taught me that, and there are days that I believe that, but really it's just a bit of a laugh, isn't it?
I'm surprised you didn't have more questions about Reading.
It's not really about Reading.
Oh, isn't it?
No.